Hi, my name is Joe Jackson. I'm a journalist, author, interviewer, and broadcaster who's interviewed roughly 1,400 celebrities over a 30-year period for nearly all major media outlets in Ireland. More recently, during the summer of 2020 to be precise, and partly as my personal response to being in lockdown during the COVID-19 pandemic, I became a podcaster, starting with the Joe Jackson Interviews podcast based on my archive, which contains those 1,400 cassette-taped interviews, plus countless radio broadcasts I made. But yesterday, November the 20th, 2020, what I made was a mistake, inadvertently, in response to all the nonsense that has arisen yet again this Christmas in relation to the lyric of the Pogues and Kirsty McColl's recording, Fairytale of New York. I uploaded a clip of Kirsty talking about Shane MacGowan and the song. Since then, in fact, in the past hour, I've watched on YouTube an immensely moving and inspiring documentary called Who Killed Kirsty McColl, which details her mother's Herculean struggle to get justice in relation to the speedboat accident that killed her daughter, this time, as it transpires and I hadn't realised, 20 years ago. And so I see that it was insulting of me in a way, as someone who owns an entire cassette tape of Kirsty McColl talking with me about her own music and her life, to have just posted that clip about Fairytale of New York. I apologise to her fans and her family and to anyone who loved the woman for doing so. By way of trying to make amends, I shall now upload the entire tape, which I dedicate to the memory of Kirsty McColl, who was born in 1959 and died in 2000. By the way, if you want to read the article I wrote about Kirsty back in 1993 when we did this interview, check out my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com.
Because he's not such a social animal, really. Yeah. But there's a lot of things I like in songwriting. I like wit, which is something that people sort of get really excited. They get kind of have a very strange reaction when they hear things that are funny in lyrics, I think, because they associate them with novelty records. It's got to be a novelty if it's funny. I don't see why. I think humour's a really important part of life, I mean, it's a great defence against all the misery in the world, and it's sort of very important to. I don't see why you can't exercise wit when you're writing a song.
But there's this kind of notion that great art is made in terms of humour. You know what I mean? It's a kind of naive notion that great paintings, great theatre, great films, great music has to have this dark thread or dominant thread of darkness.
Well, no, I think a lot of humour does have dark elements to it because if there isn't a grain of truth running through it, then it's generally not really funny,
Right. I
mean, the funniest things are things that, there might be awful things to laugh about, but you just know it because they're true, But I think the Marx Brothers were made as great pieces of artistic film as anyone else,
Did I see you mention the Marx Brothers in relation to your family background? I mean, what, in terms of that was what you were introduced to, that kind of... Does the father connection, does the name connection bother you that people do come in with inevitably some questions like that, or is it just...
Well, it's...
Has it ever been a kind of...
It's hard to talk about things that you've been trying to sort of forget about for 20 years, and when people are constantly asking you about, your childhood and your family, it just sort of rakes it all up, and you start feeling really depressed again, because,
Do you? Have you not come to terms... Is it not better to kind of rake it up, deal with it, and then get rid of it, rather than...
Well, I do try and deal with it, but it doesn't seem to make me feel terribly much better after I've dealt with it. So.
Really? What about writing about it? Would that be part of...
Well, that's
more
something I do as well, but, there are still some things that are just painful to talk about, and it's like the whole idea of talking about incredibly personal things to people that you don't know.
Sure. Or writing about them, though. I'm not talking necessarily, writing direct, explicit songs about those things, those subjects.
Well, yes, might be good on one level, but on the other hand, you just feel like, well, maybe you should just leave things alone, It's a long time ago, and just, nobody meant to hurt each other, but it was all, that was the way it was.
Would you ever think then of dropping the name? So the questions don't arise, it probably would come in.
Well, I think it'd be a bit late now, I've been making records for 15 years, it's hardly good, so it'd be a bit...
Did you ever consider
I could change my name now, but would anybody be very convinced,
Did you ever consider it? Did you ever think, I don't need all this, so I'm going to just...
Well, it didn't occur to me when I started out, maybe it was very naive, it didn't occur to me that it would be such a big deal, really.
Right.
Because my contemporaries and my my sort of age group, my peer group, were not so aware of, my dad's music. It
Sure.
was very much belonged to an older generation,
Yeah. And do you ever get any kind of approach or flack from people from that generation that you haven't, you're supposed to carry on some kind of tradition they don't see you doing?
Well, not very often, but I think occasionally when I've done gigs, you see a few people and you think, oh, they don't look like the typical audience,
So they're waiting for the hand in the ear and the...
I think they might be waiting for, maybe they just see the name and think, oh, she's going to be doing all her father's songs or something. But they're, they're obviously people who've never kind of listened to any of my records, otherwise they'd know what I do,
Yeah, but like I said earlier, maybe if they did listen, this is what I find just off-putting about purists in any field. If they did listen to the fact that you use rap or you do use whatever strains it are, it still is folk music. But they've kind of cut off in 1950, 60, and anything beyond that cannot be pure, whereas they really should be checking out, like,
I find boundaries really, pointless in art, in any kind of art. I mean, it's like ridiculous, sort of getting so sort of narrow-minded about something. If you really believe passionately in something is great, then you don't have to be narrow-minded about it. You can draw in influences from everywhere.
Well, you do that. I mean, that's your whole range.
Yeah, well, I like, I do have a huge, range of stuff that I listen to, and I suppose that's reflected in what I do. I like Latin music.
Right.
I like...
very much dominated the last album.
Yeah, well, we recorded a lot of the last album in New York and used a lot of Latin musicians, and I was really... It was very exciting. It was an incredibly exciting recording session, when you've got an 8-piece band playing live, and they're all superb, I mean, I get great kicks out of working with great musicians, and I'm lucky in that sense. I've been unlucky in other things, but I've always had a wealth of greatly talented people to work with.
What was the response to the rap track? Did anybody say this was a strange mix, or they didn't understand why you were using a rap?
I think some people who didn't like anything I'd ever done wouldn't like that, but I think that, in America and stuff, it got more attention than anything I'd ever done before, and, it was a hit, so, I mean, obviously the public quite liked it.
Yeah. So how did that affect the approach to the new album? I mean, what was the dominant musical?
Well, I don't...
It spread wide again.
Yeah, when you start writing for an album, I mean, the last thing I do is sit down and think, all right, well, what, how am I going to change it all from the last album? I mean, my approach is, I've got something going on in my head that I want to write about, and then I write about it, and then I think, right, I've got this song, and it's fairly kind of like this, and maybe I should use this drummer on it, and that bass player, and, it's a question of picking the musicians who are going to be, suitable for that particular song. And, for me, I don't think, okay, well, every song on the album has to have a feature that's exactly the same musicians.
Right.
Although on this one, I think there's a smaller sort of core of people that I was working with than on any of the other albums I've ever done. And that was because it was all recorded in London, and a lot of it was, recorded with a band that I was working live with.
Right.
So, there's less foreign influences, if you like.
There's a musical consistency, though, they're running just this kind of every kind of mood. I mean,
Thank God for that.
Yeah. So before I talk about specific tracks, but just in terms of when two mentions of older things that people are going to hook into, which is the Elvis thing. Why was he and that's humour. I mean, you started off obviously with humour in that one. Why was Presley the icon in that? What was that?
Well, it's not it's not him as an icon. It was about, it's sort of about a guy who thinks he's, who's kind of acting like he's swaggering. He's a swaggerer,
right.
And he basically, I think there's a little bit of Elvis in a lot of men, you know what I mean? And it's that it's that part that they choose to project, like, hey babe, I'm here, I'm cool, look at me, And
is that attractive?
It was more
or ludicrous?
It's both.
All right.
Depending on the
male.
And where how grown up you are, I suppose.
Right.
But it was more about Elvis as a state of mind than being specifically about Elvis.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, everybody knows Elvis, and there's no point saying, oh well, he thinks he's so and so, and you're naming some obscure French kind of poet,
it wouldn't rhyme. It sounded better anyway.
Yeah.
Thinks he's Rambo, thinks he's Baudelaire. The guy down he's Baudelaire. It doesn't really work, does it? And the other thing is, we've talked about kind of purist response to music. The Pogues have been criticised for chambering a rock sensibility. I mean, rockers love it. But again, the kind of Irish traditional element is like, and the Dubliners get it, and a lot of the other bands do, for bringing in rock rhythms. I mean, you thought that mix again was healthy, breaking boundaries, but all they've done together.
Well, I don't think you can keep if something is if you've got a valid art form, you can't sort of suspend it in time.
Right.
And you can't say, oh well, look, we've never used electricity yet, so we're not going to use electricity. Even though everybody else has been doing it for 200 years. Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of, I think it's just unnecessary to be so kind of pedantic about it all.
Right.
I mean, why not use, good elements of all kinds of things,
But it's also made that music more relevant to a different generation. I mean, that's probably one of the most, I've seen it described as a postmodern Christmas song. The first postmodern Christmas song. But it's the kind of Christmas song that young people, that's the one they hook to, not White Christmas. You know what I mean? So it's become kind of...
Well, I think that was I don't think it's because it's not a particularly rock sort of presentation in that song.
No, not presentation, but
it's very traditional in a way. I mean, it's all, the playing on it is fairly traditional, the instruments are sort of fairly traditional, and the orchestra, is a very traditional sound.
When I say rock sensibility, I mean the attitude.
Yeah, the attitude.
The lyrics.
The lyrics are so good, and I think that's why I like it so much, is because it so much, especially at Christmas, a lot of the music is so cloyingly sentimental that it makes you, it's like eating too much cake, it just makes you feel sick. It's like, oh no, not again. It's like, I can't handle White Christmas again. And when you get something that, is much more earthy and warts and all, but it's still very romantic.
Post-punk.
Yeah, but it's very romantic without being sort of sickly,
Yeah. Do you like Shane as a lyricist? I mean,
I think he's brilliant.
One of the strongest composers. Yeah.
Well, he's a fantastic lyricist. I wish he'd look after himself better and be able to sort of put his lyrics across better, because I think he'd do himself better justice. I mean,
But he's not putting them across at all now.
Well,
which is the sadness.
He is actually. I mean, he's got a new band together and stuff, and I did a gig with him at Christmas, and he was in really good form. It was better form than I've seen for a long time. So I haven't seen him for a while, but hopefully that.
The image is of him as a man going down, drowning, having killed his talent and slowly just.
But that's been his image for an awfully long time, and I think he'll probably outlive all of us.
Do you think so? I hope so. I hope he proves us all wrong.
I hope so.
But there is this kind of like when he turned up on Van. Like the Brit thing, it's like, will he turn up? Will he be able to perform? Is he going to make a fool of himself on television? Which is horrible when you think of that core talent that's there.
Yeah, it is. It's a great waste, really.
Yeah. Okay, so just give me a little more, because you talked about the vocal arrangements. Not about the work you've done with people, but about the art of vocal arranging. There's a kind of thing in rock culture where songwriters are the top of the hierarchy, and people who just sing or do other things are kind of like somehow less. And I don't think it's always recognised the art that goes into arranging.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's as valid an instrument as anything else, and you can't sort of dismiss people who use their voice instead of using a clarinet or something. But I mean, I write songs as well, so that's.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of the major figures, like you talked about Elvis, from the Sinatras to the Billie Holidays and all those people, going right back through whenever.
Billie Holiday wrote songs.
Well, not very many.
Yeah, she did. She wrote Strange Fruit. She did.
Strange Fruit was a poem by Langston Hughes, which is set to music. No, she did write God Bless the Child.
Oh, right.
No, Strange Fruit is a hell of a lyric.
Yeah.
She wrote that. That's astounding stuff. Well, just, the way, talk a little about the way you use the voices on It's You. The way, I mean, it's a very meticulous arrangement. You're bringing in layers of voices on one word first, then as harmony. I mean, you meticulously work with that, or does it just kind of fall together in the studio?
No, I mean, actually on this album I probably use less harmonies than I have done in previous work, because this is the first album I've done since I've been working live a lot, and there's that's in the back of my head now. It's like, I don't want to make this totally unreproducible, or I mean, obviously there are harmonies in some places that there are more than others, but I'm aware now in the back of my head that we're going to go out and be doing this, and that obviously I'm not taking a choir with me, and there's I have a band, but I mean they're only going to be able to sing a certain amount. They're not going to be able to do all the parts I do, and
so you recorded aware of those limitations.
Well, what I was trying to do is just to get the lead vocals stronger, really, because I used to be so nervous about performing before, that when I didn't, do live stuff, that it's like I'd do the lead vocal and I think, oh, well, I'll put 20 other vocals on it as well, and build it up that way. And I think now I just sort of concentrate on getting the one good one, and then just little bits here and there where I need them.
Well, that's why people have said that we haven't seen Enya perform much with 120 vocal tracks in one particular song. How do you reproduce that on stage?
Well, exactly, You know
what I mean? That's a kind of hell of a drawback. I mean, great albums that sell beautifully, but then when somebody wants you to perform, you're kind of lost with one voice. You also use classical influences, well, in Soho Square and jazz-based stuff. I mean, you have all those, and that's going to be a problem in terms of reproducing sounds on stage.
I'm quite lucky in the fact that the band I've got are very, very versatile, and I thought I went out and toured America before Christmas, and I'd never done a proper big tour there. I'd only played in New York and Los Angeles before, and so really it was an opportunity to play stuff off the new album and the last two albums as well, and old singles and everything, and just getting the right band who can actually cope with playing a Latin song and then going and doing a few rock numbers and then doing Miss Otis Regrets. I mean, I think if you get really good, competent musicians, who have a gift for lots of different kinds of music and versatility, then you're okay. And I was, I've got a great band together, but
that broad spectrum of music's tapping into all that is really what defines the work you're doing.
Well, I suppose
being able to shift from that.
I get criticised, for having too many influences. It's like, oh well, she's doing this or she's doing that, as if you have no right to experiment. I'm sorry, but didn't you write teen ballads? You better keep doing that.
Well, that's the age of specialisation. I think that's the curse in terms of any art. Where
I think it makes everything boring.
Well, it's also record companies tend to market you a certain way.
Yeah.
And radio stations want you to be a certain way.
Well, it makes radio programming easier if you stay in your box, and your category, and don't, don't venture out into any other things. But that's like turning around to a painter and saying, look, you can do anything you like, but you can only use blue.
You only do landscapes. Well, you did say that you don't use, unless this is a misquote from the same interview, songs to get across, like, I think you used the image of bleeding through somebody's speakers, like pouring your emotions through the songs.
I think that's because, a lot of people have said, oh, why's your delivery so deadpan? And to me, it's not deadpan, it's really passionate. Right. But, I suppose,
I think it's deadpan. Who said it's deadpan? Deadpan delivery?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
I mean, that's, I'm glad you don't think so, but obviously somebody else did. But I just tend to, I find it really hard listening to those people who have really big voices and are going, whoa, that sort of over kind of, I don't know, over emoting. Yeah, I find that, you don't need to do it. And I don't find it very convincing, because a lot of the people who do it are the sort of people that I can't listen to at all.
Oh, you mean the vocal style? The style is kind of... well, a lot of that, I mean, that could go back to just the purest respect for a song, that you're not supposed to fracture a song with your own ego and your own emotions. You're supposed to just respect the song, the lyric, the music, and it'll work.
Well, I just, I mean, a lot of those songs that are sung that way, to me, they're very poor songs in the first place, a lot of them, and they're very sort of like overused kind of, ideas and coming from the same angle all the time. I don't know how people can go and be convincingly kind of like, my way every time,
But you do that when you say you don't express. You're not saying you don't express your emotions through songs. There's a lot of romantic longings, and that come out through a lot of the songs.
Oh yeah, I mean, of course you express your emotions through them, but I think they're more expressed in the words than probably in my voice.
The style of singing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about something like Soho Square?
Well, that's a romantic song.
Absolutely. Did you ever feel your life could be saved by an embrace or a kiss? I mean, is that romantic?
Yeah.
Longing. I mean, that's a pretty dark-hearted song too. Like, that kiss can save you from dying before your birthday, or whatever the lyric is. That's a poet. Somebody listening. That's true reflection of yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't. There are some songs where I assume a character. Really. And become a character and become that person for the duration of the song, and there's other songs that are just kind of more me, really. I think Soho Square
is more you.
Yeah.
And you really felt that feeling. Is that a painful or a joyful feeling to feel you could be saved by a kiss?
But it's both, isn't it? I think pain and joy are sort of fairly mixed up. They're fairly mixed up on this album.
They are, aren't they?
Yeah.
Within the same songs, there's always a kind of double layer to even the joyful songs or celebratory songs. There's another kind of tone underneath them.
Well, it's all, all these emotions are flip sides of the same coin, really. I think, you can't really be hurt by someone who you don't love. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, if somebody slagged you off and you don't really care about them, it's not half as kind of deep as if somebody who you really adore.
Yeah, but you're also saying about being hurt by somebody who doesn't even know you love them, aren't you? It's kind of like this kind of unknown quantity love, or something that can't be expressed. I mean, there are those kind of feelings and emotions being explored on the album.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, be very careful here. Obviously, don't talk about those things. So what about Bad? You did that last night on the, I think you'll be singing for a lot of women there. I quoted the lyrics to two friends, and they said, been there, seen that, done that.
Good.
No, but I think it's very good. But it is obviously, I mean, that kind of notion of, I love the token woman all my life, token daughter, said with so many tokens. I mean, what is that rooted in?
Well, I mean, that was, obviously a bit, it's tongue-in-cheek, and it's obviously a bit, a bit autobiographical, but it also, I mean, I think I sort of started out thinking of the first three lines and thinking, that's bloody hell. But I think...
What, anger?
Yeah, it's frustration more than anger, really, just general frustration. And I think a lot of people are, frustrated. And I suppose as you get older, you start being aware of all the things that you haven't done, that you may never do. Because when you're young, you think, oh, I haven't done that yet. I can't wait to do that. Oh, God, I'm going to do that as well, And I suppose, when you get older and, you've had a family or whatever, you're more aware that there's a possibility that quite a lot of the things that you dreamed of doing, you may never get the opportunity.
Right.
And but I had this really strong image of a woman who'd be like probably making breakfast for her kids, and they go to school, and she works all day, and then to earn extra money, she goes out and cleans offices in the evening, and and then she'll have to go back and make their tea and stuff. And she's, the reason it's sort of like so creepy is because she's actually having a nervous breakdown. But she's she's cleaning up in this office and singing very quietly because she's going completely bananas, And
at the frustration of her life.
Yeah.
All the things about her that she has.
Well, yeah, she just feels like, it's like, what's the point of all this?
Right. It's a bit Shirley Valentine,
I suppose
the hands
so.
on my buttocks. I thought
it's a cross between Shirley Valentine and Lorena Bobbitt, I suppose.
Oh, is that it? Oh, yeah. Which aspect of the Bobbitt?
Well, there's a carving knife in the last verse. Can't you hear it? It goes. We used it as a percussion instrument.
That's symbolic, isn't it?
Well, it was funny because I'd written it about a year before we went and toured it in America, and when we did it, the trial was being televised at that time, and everyone was, I'd say, oh, this is a song about a frustrated woman with a carving knife, and they'd all go, yeah.
Would that kind of, but there's also a valid wronging there. I mean, there are probably many women of a particular generation or whatever who suddenly do realise there are those potentials they never explored.
Yeah.
Apart from the humour.
There's probably a lot of men too, but I think women are more likely to sort of subjugate their own desires in order to, please their families than men are a lot of the time. I don't think it's expected of men quite as much. I mean, it's expected of a woman, and, and even the most right-on people still feel like that. And I get, it's like when people say to me, how do you manage to juggle a career and a family? Well, who's ever asked a man that question? Has anybody ever said to a male pop star, hey, how did you manage to go on tour? Your wife's just had a baby. I mean, it's like, well, of course they go on tour. I don't have to do it, do I? I don't have to clean nappies and all that stuff. But it's something that's always assumed that the woman will give up everything that she's ever wanted to do in order to look after the family.
Well, many do.
Many of them do. Yeah. Many of them have to, and they're not in a position, to choose.
Or whatever, to do that. Would you risk husband and children for a fling with a fleeting stranger?
Probably not, but it's fun to write about.
Would you not, though? I mean, because I'm sure there are many women, or many men, but maybe more women, because we've just talked about, who do seriously consider, who find themselves in the situation and have to make a choice.
I don't know, I'll have to find myself in the situation first.
So those songs aren't out of direct experiences like that.
Come on.
No, come on. But the same theme runs through Titanic Days. I mean, there is this kind of sense of romantic longing through all those songs. A lot of the songs operate in a twilight world.
Yeah.
Like just before dawn or just after darkness. I mean, isn't there that link between maybe 3-4 songs on the album?
It is, and I think I was in quite a dark sort of mood, really, for a lot of the album. But I hope it doesn't sort of come out as a depressing record, you know.
Not depressing, but it might suggest that this is what you're travelling through, whether you've adopted a persona
Well, I think
to
you
sing
get
a song.
certain period, you know, every few years in your life you have a period, or I do, of total reassessment and thinking, well, is this it? You know, is this it?
Right.
Is there anything else?
This is the more. Right. But is that what's coming through in these songs? Were these written through a period of reevaluation?
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of things, you know, going on, and just, I mean, career-wise, and lots of other things too. And it was a sort of, you know, well, I don't know how you put it really.
You see, I really think this is how people are going to hook into the album, because I get those resonances from the songs, wherever they're coming from. I think that's what people are going to tune into or hook into, you know, especially those four, at least 4 songs, which have that kind of, whatever it is, romantic longing or darkness or contemplative feel to them, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, when you're young, you have this confidence about so many things. You see things much more in black and white, and everything's good or bad, or, you know, this or that, and you have these sort of polarised views of everything.
Right.
And I just think that, you know, as you get a bit older, you start realising that there's an awful lot of grey between the black and white. In fact, the grey sort of merges into everything, you know, so...
So these are songs in shades of grey. Are they? What about Titanic Days with that kind of epic ending? I mean, what is that? She's going down after these liaisons in a none too cheap hotel. She's coming down. Why does it end like that? I mean, it's like...
Well, I don't know.
Sinking.
When I wrote it with Mark Nevin, and when we wrote... when we'd sort of written the main part of the song, I said to him, I've got the, you know, I really want to get Fiacre Trench on this, because he's the string arranger.
Yeah.
He worked on Soho Square, and I've, you know, worked with him over the years, and I just thought that he was perfect. You know, it was like, this is the album to get Fiacre on, you know.
Right.
And I always had this vision of having it, you know, I just wanted that, there was all this kind of like turmoil going on at the beginning of the song, and then it needed a sort of serenity at the end to sort of resolve it for me, because otherwise it was just kind of too dark, you know. And I think I did this thing with the radio where I went along, you know, the dial and recorded it along every station, so you get little snatches of things, and then right at the end, I don't know what it was, because we were just, you know, just doing it sort of, let's take this and go along together. When I got to the end of the dial, it was just this white noise that was just going... And I kept waiting for it to end. I thought, oh, it must be an explosion or something. And then it just went on and on and on, you know, and it was so, such a brilliant sound. I thought, well, that, you know, that it's sort of like, it could be either a ship going down or it could be like Hiroshima, you know. And then I put on originally, you know, I had a bit, I used a bit of Wagner or something just to give the mood of how I was going to end it. So that I could say to Fiacre, look, I don't want this music here, but I want you to take the theme from the rest of the song and write a piece that we can put over the end that will be really romantic and sweet and sad, and, you know, stick seagulls in it.
This sounds like Shirley Valentine again. It sounds like that woman having the breakdown. But it's very heavy. I mean, it's like, but Don't Go Home, Tomorrow Never Comes. They do have that there again about the pain of lost longing in that. I mean, whatever. This is the core kind of feeling that comes through in those 2 songs too. Yeah. Yeah, and the pain of that being worth it. You know, it's that kind of thing that whatever the price paid for this was, it was the experience was worth it, or and is that what comes through?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know to positivity after all.
yeah. After all that, no, but is that what it is? I mean, you said you hope the album or those particular songs are not depressing, even if they look at kind of darker emotions.
Well, you know, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy sad music, you know, I think a lot of people do. It's not necessarily depressing, it's kind of, it makes, you know, you can sit there and enjoy, you know, crying along to an old movie, do you know what I mean? It's like, you don't think, oh, I mustn't do this because I'm not having a good time. You are actually having a good time, but you're really in touch with a lot of emotions that you don't normally express, I suppose.
Like who? Who has done that for you? Who would you listen to that would serve that purpose?
Well, on certain occasions, you know, the Smiths and Morrissey and stuff, but I mean, there's quite a lot of classical music. It doesn't really have to have lyrics in it to make you feel that sort of emotion, you know. Wagner. Well, I don't listen to a lot of Wagner, but
no, that's pretty heavy stuff.
It was just, the little piece I used on that, just to give an idea to the musicians, really. But no, I mean, I suppose it depends what sort of mood you're in, and if you're that sort of person, and if you're one of these people who finds it incredibly hard to open up, or whether it's sort of like, always, just bubbling under the surface and just waiting to gush out,
Right. Are you a person who finds it incredibly hard to open up? I feel a strong resistance to some of the questions if you think I'm trying to tear into the recesses of your soul.
Well, I think
which I'm not, but you do seem to be.
Well, I'm quite a private person, really,
Right.
and I find it quite hard to talk about, personal things, really. I don't think that's...
In public situations like this kind of interview, as opposed to with people who are
as opposed to it with an analyst.
Yeah, or a friend. Yeah. But then there are people who don't even open up like that to friends or lovers or husbands or wives, and find that music or art in any form is what opens the channels.
Well, I feel, music sort of makes me feel better than anything else, really.
Yeah.
It does actually
What's
physically
better,
make
though,
me
in touch with yourself, more kind of...
I suppose so. Better. How do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's like an escape, in your head. I mean, when I was a kid and I used to get home from school, the first thing I'd do was go down to my room and put on a record and just like, and I'd be immediately somewhere else. I wouldn't be at my school,
Right.
having a hard time. I'd be like in wherever I wanted to be, and
Right.
doing things that I wasn't doing really, but just kind of, it transports you really, and makes you think, life isn't all completely crap,
Right. You want your music to serve the same purpose in ways? People obviously would.
Well, I think that hopefully, if you've done a good job and a song's good, then people will draw what they need from it, and they might interpret it in a way that you hadn't intended, but that doesn't matter. It's as valid. I mean, your interpretation of my songs is as valid as what they're actually about.
Even if... thank you very much. Very good.
And anybody's is. No, do you know what I mean?
You mean the interpretations are that far off the wall?
No. But some people are, spot on, and some people think it's about something completely different. But I don't. But it doesn't matter, because the point is they've got something out of it, and they've drawn some conclusion, and they've found something in it that they can relate to, and that's, I think, what a good song's about. Because you don't have to ring up. Well, you can't now, but you wouldn't have to ring up Lennon and McCartney and say, I really like that song. What exactly is it about? You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't really matter if they wrote it about the dog, or if they wrote it about the father or their lover or whatever. It's kind of, it's whether or not you recognise an emotion in there.
Well, you don't
or
want to
some human frailty,
It's a echo of yourself, or echo
Yeah.
of humanity. You don't influence women to running off the carbon knife now with bad, do you?
Well, far be it from me to hold them back.
So you do. So, okay, I'll wrap up then by saying, which interpretations of songs did I get so far removed from what they were? No,
I don't think you have. I think you're sort of pretty, I think it's, I think you've listened to...
No, I really don't want to misrepresent the song, because my readers are going to judge, to an extent.
No, you haven't misrepresented the songs. I think you're pretty on the right track.
Yeah, but pushing too far.
Well, the thing is, you spend a lot of time, months and months and like years of your life sort of working towards doing these songs. And if you could turn around and just say, oh, well, that's about that, and that in 2 minutes, then you wouldn't have had to write the song in the first place.
Yeah. Okay.
It would make it all unnecessary.
But what's important is what the song becomes actually then to the listener. That's what you're saying, what he takes from it, as opposed to
what they find to
relate to their own
relate
lives.
to.
Yeah. Okay, I can leave it there. The time we've enough.
Hi, Joe Jackson here again. I thank you for listening to this edition of the Joe Jackson Interviews podcast. The Kirsty McColl article, as I said earlier, is available at my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com.